Senior Advisor to Governor Brian Kemp, Cody Hall, joining us now. Cody, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. I want to ask you about the shakeup with the Georgia Democrats. We know that Congresswoman Nikema Williams, who was once the leader of the party, she has decided to step down. The interim now in place there, and they are set to have a vote next month on who is going to be this new leader. What is the thought process right now going on with Republicans with the shakeup with the Democrats?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty inopportune time for the Democrats to be having a leadership vacuum as they start to approach the 2026 cycle because, the case or the problem in front of them is going to be pretty difficult to navigate. The Democrats here in the state are in the position of having to convince voters that our state is headed in the wrong direction and that they should fire the team in charge. And I think most polls show that voters are very satisfied with the direction of the state and they have a high approval of the job that the governor has done. So the last thing that you need if you're Georgia Democrats at this point is to be having a leadership battle and trying to figure out, their infrastructure and who's in charge as they head into a very important election cycle where they have a pretty difficult task ahead of them.
Like you said, Cody, 2026, not too far away here. It's going to be a very big year, very competitive races.
Absolutely. I mean, you'll have a Senate race. You'll obviously have open races for governor and potentially a host of other statewide offices. So, really, whenever you look at all the different candidates that could be running for higher office, but like I said, right now is not really a great time to be having a leadership fight for the Georgia Democrats because when you have candidates announcing, you really want to go ahead and have your party leadership in there so they can help manage the candidates and also help them be more effective out on the campaign trail. Obviously, they're going to have to wait for a new chair to be elected to be able to do that.
Democrats obviously saw some sweeping changes this past election cycle with Biden dropping out of the race and Vice President Kamala Harris going in there. So a challenge, like you were saying, that they've seen before, switching up kind of that leadership at the top there.
Yeah, and I mean, look, 2026 is going to be a tough year across the country for Democrats if they're not able to find a message that actually resonates with voters. What you saw in 2024 is that voters across the country and here in Georgia rejected the Biden-Harris agenda and rejected their vision for the future of the country. So really, right now, Democrats across the country and Democrats here in Georgia, they're going to have to find a message that really resonates with voters here and candidates that can not only carry that message forward, but also raise the resources necessary to win races. Because again, they have to go out and prove to voters or convince voters that they should fire the team in charge here in the state. And that Republican team over the last three governors, from Sonny Perdue, Nathan Deal, and obviously now Governor Brian Kemp, that team has cut taxes. They've spurred record historic economic growth and investment here in the state. They've expanded school choice. They've invested more in our classrooms than ever before. They have brought new companies here. They've helped existing companies expand. It's a great time to be in Georgia, and our state's growing because of the leadership we've had here across the board, whether you think about education, infrastructure, tax and regulatory environment, you name it, Republicans in Georgia have made our state better off than they found it. And I think that's the challenge ahead for Georgia Democrats, specifically, not just across the country.
I want to change gears here and ask you about tariffs. We've heard a lot of this buzzword tariffs since the Trump administration came into play, one of his top priorities, and he's really making it known to every country. I want to talk about China. We saw China impose a retaliatory 125% tariff on all U.S. goods. The governor coming out and saying that he does support these tariffs, the 125% tariff that was imposed by the Trump administration. Some reports saying that that is now up to 145%. It's been a lot of back and forth with this, right, Cody? Because China is such a big trading partner here in Georgia, what impact is that going to have on business owners here?
I think the exact impact remains to be seen. What the governor said is that he supports the focus really being on China in terms of their unfair trade practices. Because look, China has been trying to rip off the American people for decades now. And kudos to the Trump administration for being the first willing to really address what China has been doing from a currency devaluation standpoint, um, taking intellectual property from Georgia and American businesses, taking advantage of the free trade practices that the United States has had for many years now, because China does not play by the same rules as everyone else. And so, again, kudos to the Trump administration for finally saying enough is enough. China needs to follow the same rules that everyone else does. They need to be actual, to your point, free trade partners, and not taking advantage of the American people and our small businesses and large corporations that are importing and exporting different goods and services between our two countries. Again, the impact, obviously, we'll have to wait and see how some of this shakes out. There's obviously, to your point, a lot going on very quickly and a lot changing very quickly. But I think at the end of the day, the Trump administration and the president has said that this is a priority for them to make sure that China no longer is able to take advantage of the hardworking men and women of our country.
Just one follow-up for you. I know that it's still to be seen what will happen, but is there a plan in place if small business owners, farmers do feel some impact with increased prices from this trade war?
Yeah, I think the thing I'll be watching personally is, everyone is asking what's the impact going to be on many Americans, and I think rightfully so. I think one of the key pieces of that is actually how quickly Chinese manufacturers and Chinese producers start to feel the pinch of those tariffs, because they're really going to be the ones on the front line paying that as they export goods to the United States. So I'll be looking to see how quickly those producers and those manufacturers in China start to
So,
feel those
Cody,
tariffs. Yeah.
and I just will, you said that the producers in China, the vendors, are going to feel that, but aren't those prices just going to be reflected through the American businesses? We're already seeing some tariff add-ons with
Yeah.
certain companies.
Well, I think that that's why I said I'm going to be looking to see how it starts there, because
Got
I
it.
think then the
Okay.
Chinese businesses and manufacturers are going to be putting pressure on their government to potentially change their attitude towards the United States.
Okay.
Look, I think at the end of the day, one of the main reasons, as a Reagan Republican myself, I don't believe that tariffs are the best method to achieve economic prosperity across the board long term. And that's why I'm hoping that these tariff moves are short term by the Trump administration so that they can bring the Chinese to the table and actually negotiate a fair deal that respects the American worker, the American producer, the American farmer, and does not long term have price impacts that impacts everyone's wallets. Obviously, we're going to have to wait to see what happens. But I do think it's key to see how this impacts the Chinese producers and manufacturers and what pressure they're able to put on their government to actually come to the table and negotiate with the Trump administration.